I got the first letter on a Tuesday morning. Boring looking. No stamp, no logo, just "to current resident" scrawled on it like some kind of mass-mailed ad. But what was inside? That was anything but ordinary. I opened it, expecting a coupon or some local promotion, and instead found this weirdly formal notice printed in bold. Notice of violation. My eyes narrowed. Violation of what? I kept reading. Apparently, I had failed to comply with the newly enforced regulations of the Pleasant Pines Homeowners Association. Now here's the thing. There was no HOA here when I bought the property. That was half the reason I chose it. I did my due diligence. No monthly dues, no committees, no people measuring my grass with a ruler. So imagine my confusion when I'm suddenly being told I owe $175 for, and I quote, a non-compliant mailbox design. I sat there, holding the letter in one hand and staring out at my basic black mailbox, the kind literally everyone has. There was nothing fancy about it. No wild colors, no LED lights or flamingo statues glued to the top. Just your run-of-the-mill box from the local hardware store. I laughed at first. Thought maybe it was a prank or some mistake. Someone sending out fake notices for fun. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. But the next day, another letter. This time it claimed I owed $200 for failure to submit landscaping plans prior to yard work. Landscaping plans. What is this? A botanical garden? My yard was mowed, my hedges trimmed, nothing out of place. And now suddenly, I needed to submit blueprints before touching a lawnmower. The third letter came that same week. $100 fine for trash bin visibility. They said my garbage cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day. I double-checked. They weren't. But even if they had been, so what? At this point, I realized this wasn't a one-off mistake. Someone was testing me, pushing buttons, seeing how far they could go. I started asking around, talked to a couple of neighbors, kept it casual. Some of them had gotten similar letters, others hadn't. But they all mentioned one name, Karen. Always Karen. She was just trying to keep the community beautiful. Just trying to maintain standards. But the way people said her name, it had weight to it, like they'd learned not to cross her. And then, one morning, I found her standing at the edge of my driveway. She didn't say hi, didn't smile, just stood there, arms folded, oversized sunglasses hiding half her face, clipboard clutched like it was sacred. She didn't introduce herself. She announced herself. I'm Karen, head of the HOA committee. Committee of what? I asked, since there is no HOA here. She smiled, like I was the slow one. We've recently expanded the HOA boundaries to better serve the surrounding properties. Serve. That was a word choice. I told her flat out, I never signed anything. Never agreed to be part of any association. She didn't flinch. Your property is adjacent to HOA land, she said, as if that meant something. It's in everyone's best interest that all homes meet community expectations. I asked her if the law backed that up. Her response? It's not about law, it's about order. She handed me a paper, another fine, $250 this time, for improper vehicle storage. My truck, parked neatly in my own damn driveway. I told her I wasn't paying a cent. That's when she hit me with the smile, the kind that says, you'll see. She turned and walked off like she'd already won. And that's when I realized this wasn't some annoying paperwork mix-up. Karen had declared war. Over the next 2 weeks, it turned into full-blown harassment. I couldn't check my mailbox without finding a new notice. I racked up over $1,000 in supposed fines. Every letter sounded more official than the last, complete with bold fonts and hollow threats, like further legal action pending. One of them even had a fake case number. Then came the stunts. Garbage showed up on my lawn, bags of it, as if someone dumped them from the back of a truck. My mailbox got knocked over not once, but twice in 3 days. The second time, it looked like someone had run over it with a car and peeled out on purpose. Then I started noticing the stairs. I'd step outside and see blinds shift. Neighbors who used to wave now barely looked at me. A couple even crossed the street instead of walking past my house. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. But then I ran into this guy, Jim. Older guy, been around the neighborhood forever. Real no-nonsense type. We bumped into each other at the gas station. He gave me this look, half sympathy, half warning, and said, "Hope you get that HOA stuff figured out. Karen's been talking." I asked him what he meant. He sighed, said she'd been telling people I had legal issues, that I was a problem homeowner. Even mentioned something about a warrant. A warrant. I blinked. That was new. He shook his head. She's been trying to run this place like her own kingdom for years. Most people just pay the fines to keep the peace. I thanked him and left. But inside, I was burning. Karen wasn't just being annoying. She was trying to ruin me. She had planted herself in the middle of this quiet neighborhood and declared herself judge, jury, and executioner. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, is that I'm not just some regular guy living in a house with a truck and a trimmed lawn. I'm a US Marshal. And she just stepped into something she had no idea how to handle. A few days after the talk with Jim, I get home from work and find an envelope waiting for me. This one stood out. It wasn't handwritten like the others. It was typed, sealed in a crisp manila envelope and marked, "Urgent, final legal notice." The kind of envelope meant to scare you before you even open it. I took it inside, dropped my bag, and peeled it open right on the kitchen counter. What I pulled out made me laugh, actually laugh. It was a mock-up of an arrest warrant. Issued by the Pleasant Pines HOA Legal Enforcement Division. Looked like something a teenager made, using a word template and too much bold font. It accused me of repeated non-compliance with community regulations, failure to pay fines, and stated I was subject to detainment by authorized HOA enforcement officers. Signed, of course, by Karen Mitchell, self-appointed Queen of HOA Land. I sat there holding it, flipping it back and forth, just taking it in. I've seen real warrants before. I've processed real paperwork with judges' signatures, legal codes, badge numbers, all of it. This thing didn't even have a court seal. No judge, no case number that matched anything public. It was nonsense. But the fact that she sent it, that's what got my attention. This wasn't just fake fines and trash dumping anymore. Karen had escalated. She was now pretending to operate under the law. She was issuing fake legal threats, impersonating legal authority, and trying to use fear as a weapon. That's when I realized she was either too arrogant or too disconnected from reality to realize what she'd done. Either way, she had no idea who she was messing with. I could have called her out immediately, slapped her with a cease and desist, maybe even had the local PD knock on her door. But I didn't. Instead, I decided to let her keep going. Because the more she escalated, the easier it would be to make the entire thing fall apart. I kept everything. Every letter, every fake citation, every threat. I even started documenting the condition of my property, just in case she tried to argue about anything. And sure enough, she kept pushing. A few mornings later, I walk out to get the mail and notice something new. A bright red sticker taped across my front door. Big block letters reading, "Final warning, arrest imminent." I couldn't help but shake my head. She was really committing to this delusion. I left it there just to see if she'd come back and check. The next day, 2 more notices taped to my mailbox, and 1 slid under my front door. They were starting to multiply. She wanted me scared, paranoid, ready to fold. What she didn't know was that I was building a case with every fake document she left behind. Then came Friday morning. I'm sipping coffee, minding my business, when I hear a car door slam out front. I step outside and see them, 2 guys standing in my driveway. Matching polos, black slacks, clipboards in hand, and some seriously sad-looking plastic badges clipped to their belts. They looked like they'd just walked out of a security officer starter kit catalogue. They stood stiff, like they were trying hard to act official, but couldn't quite pull it off. One of them, taller, thin, early 30s maybe, takes a step forward. "Are you the homeowner?" he asks, voice steady but forced. I cross my arms, tilt my head. "Who's asking?" He straightens a little, like that gave him permission to be bolder. "We're with the Homeowners Association Enforcement Division. We're here to discuss your outstanding violations." The other one, shorter, stockier, tried to look tough but kept fidgeting with his badge like it wouldn't stay clipped. I raise an eyebrow and let the silence hang for a second. "You guys have names?" "IDs." They exchanged a quick glance. The short one steps up. "We have an active warrant for your arrest," he says, like he's been rehearsing it in front of a mirror. I nearly laughed in his face, but I kept it cool. "You don't say. Mind showing me this warrant?" The taller one flips through his clipboard and hands me a sheet of paper. It's the same fake nonsense I got in the mail. Only this one had my name typed out in capital letters like that made it more serious. I stare at it for a moment, then look up. "And this was issued by the HOA board." The short one nods. "Correct." I nod slowly, pretending to take it seriously. "So, let me get this straight. The HOA board issued a legal arrest warrant, and you two are here to enforce it." They both nodded again, a little too eagerly. That's when I smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind that says, "You just stepped in it." I reached into my back pocket slowly and pulled out my badge. Not plastic, not shiny toy store junk. My official federally issued US Marshal badge. I held it up between 2 fingers and let them look real close. Their faces changed instantly. Tall guy's mouth opened, but no words came out. Short guy took a literal step back like I'd hit him with a taser. I took 1 step toward them, not aggressive, just steady. "So here's what we're gonna do," I said, voice calm but low. "You just attempted to detain a federal officer under false legal pretenses. That's impersonation of law enforcement. That's obstruction. That's federal charges. So I've got 2 questions for you. 1, where's your authorization to conduct arrests? 2, do you want me to run your names before or after I cuff you?" That was all it took. Tall guy dropped his clipboard right there in the driveway and stammered something about being told it was just a warning. Short guy? He turned and ran. Didn't walk. Ran. Like his life depended on it. I didn't chase them. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching these 2 wannabe officers trip over themselves trying to get back to their car. And that's when it hit me. Karen had crossed a serious line. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't petty neighborhood drama anymore. This was criminal. She had gone so far down her own rabbit hole, she thought she could manufacture authority and send in fake cops to arrest a man she thought wouldn't fight back. But she picked the wrong guy, because I had just gotten everything I needed to take her down, and the real fun was just about to begin. Once the fake cops ran off, and I had their phony documents in hand, I didn't waste a second. I went straight to my home office, opened up a folder on my computer I'd already started weeks ago, labeled it Karen Evidence. I began compiling everything. Scanned in the fake warrant, the bogus citations, the photos I'd taken of the trash dumps, the mailbox damage, even screenshots of the neighborhood group chats where Karen had dropped vague, threatening reminders about non-compliance. I pulled the footage from my trail cam too. Clear as day, there she was, standing near my yard after dark, with a roll of tape and a stack of envelopes. I also added the license plate of the car the fake cops drove away in. Turns out it was registered to a shell company that Karen had quietly set up 3 months prior under the name Community Enforcement Solutions, LLC. Real subtle. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't the only one she'd tried this on. So I started digging. Public records, neighborhood complaints, even court filings from the local clerk's office. And what I found made my blood boil. Karen had been doing this for over a year, targeting homeowners who weren't part of the HOA, slapping them with fake citations, threatening them with legal action, and when that didn't work, she'd send in her pretend enforcement team to scare them into submission. Some people had paid thousands just to make her stop. Others had sold their homes and left entirely. And it wasn't just retirees or people who didn't know any better. I found a young couple who had just moved in a few months back. They paid $4,500 in violation fees after Karen told them their roof shingles didn't meet community visual standards. That same couple later got a letter saying their property was being considered for repossession. Repossession over shingles. But the thing that truly broke this wide open was when I pulled HOA-related property filings from the county office. Karen's name appeared on documents that shouldn't have had her signature, official liens, release notices, even dispute resolutions. There were also multiple entries filed under a judge's name, the same judge, again and again, which was odd, because these weren't real court decisions. They were HOA hearings, disguised as legal judgments. Turns out this judge had a history of siding with Karen's HOA in record time. Rubber-stamped every lien, every property seizure. Either he was in on it, or he wasn't doing his job. Either way, it meant all those rulings could be called into question. I realized then that this wasn't just a Karen power trip. It was an organized scam. An entire system built to look like official authority, but held together by smoke, mirrors, and people being too intimidated or too unaware to fight back. She'd weaponized fear. She had people believing that if they didn't pay up, men would show up at their doors and take them away. And judging by what she tried on me, she was getting bolder, more reckless, and more desperate. So I decided it was time to bait the trap. I took her most recent notice, the one with the final warning of arrest, and I wrote back. Not an email, a certified letter. I made it look real nervous, like I was finally breaking. I told her I didn't want any trouble, that I was willing to resolve the issue amicably, and I asked what steps I needed to take to avoid legal consequences. I even enclosed a fake check, photocopied only, marked void. But it added just the right touch of panic. I wanted her to think she had me exactly where she wanted me, scared, desperate, and ready to negotiate. The reply came in less than 24 hours. A letter slid under my door, this time no envelope. Just a single sheet of paper with the HOA header printed across the top in bold. Karen had written it herself. She invited me to a formal arbitration hearing. Date, time, and what she called a neutral location, the Pleasant Pines Community Activity Center. Now, this place. It's a glorified rented rec hall with fold-out chairs and bingo nights on Wednesdays. No courthouse, no judge, no clerk. Just a multi-purpose room and a big empty parking lot. The kind of place where you'd host a kid's birthday party, not settle a legal dispute. But the best part, the letter said I was required to attend. That failure to appear would be considered non-compliance with legal orders and could result in immediate collection action. Her words, not mine. She really believed this fake hearing carried the weight of the law. She was so wrapped up in her delusion that she didn't realize how deep she was digging herself in. This wasn't just a petty dispute anymore. Karen had crossed over into wire fraud, impersonation, and full-blown extortion. I wasn't going to let her squirm out of it. I spent the next day making a few calls to local law enforcement, to the district attorney's office, and most importantly, to a contact at the US Attorney's office. Once they saw what I had, the response was immediate. I didn't even have to convince them. They were eager to get involved. What Karen had built was a fraudulent HOA empire, complete with forged documents, fake enforcement, illegal property threats, and a whole fake justice system she created just to make herself feel powerful. They were all in. So we planned the sting. I was told to go in like normal. Show up on time, act compliant, let her run her charade. They'd handle the rest. And believe me, I was more than ready. Because this wasn't just about getting revenge or stopping a bully. This was about dismantling something rotten from the inside out. Karen thought she had me cornered. She thought she was finally going to win. But she had no idea that her fake courtroom was about to become very, very real. I pulled up to the Pleasant Pines Community Activity Center about 20 minutes early, just like I'd planned. From the outside, it looked completely harmless. Brick walls, faded signage, a couple of families unloading board games and snacks into a side door for what looked like a weekend potluck. You'd never guess that inside, Karen was gearing up for what she believed was her moment of triumph. I walked in with nothing but a small folder tucked under my arm. No badge, no uniform, just a plain button-down and jeans. Blending in, calm, waiting. Karen was already there. She sat at the end of a long fold-out table that she had clearly turned into her personal courtroom. She had papers neatly stacked in front of her, a bottle of water to one side, and, believe it or not, a wooden gavel resting on top of a makeshift nameplate that read HOA Director. The moment she saw me, her face lit up with this smug, fake smile, like she was thrilled that I'd finally fallen in line. "Glad you could make it," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her, like she was the judge in a high-stakes trial. I nodded, said nothing, and sat down. Two other homeowners were already in the room, people I recognized from the neighborhood, folks Karen had targeted before. They looked nervous, unsure whether this was real or just another one of her mind games. Behind her sat 3 HOA board members, none of whom I'd ever seen before, likely hand-picked puppets. One guy kept adjusting his tie every 5 seconds, like he was playing a character in a courtroom drama. Another flipped through papers he clearly didn't understand. And the third just sat there wide-eyed like he wanted nothing to do with any of this. It was a joke, a bad one. But it was her stage, and she was about to perform. Karen didn't waste time. She launched straight into her speech like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. She started rattling off charges, fake violations, unpaid dues, contract breaches, all completely fabricated. She used buzzwords that sounded legal: non-compliance, arbitration penalty, contractual obligation. But none of it held up. There were no contracts, no legal standing. Just a long list of charges that only made sense inside the fantasy courtroom she built inside her own head. I sat quietly, watching her, letting her dig the hole deeper. I noticed how her voice sped up slightly every time she reached a dollar amount. Not confidence, nerves. She was talking faster, glossing over the made-up details like she was hoping no one would ask questions. Then I saw it. She kept glancing at the door. Subtle at first, then more frequently. She was waiting for something, or someone. And that's when I knew. She had sent for the HOA enforcement officers again. She wanted the same show she tried to pull at my house, only this time with an audience. She thought she'd make an example out of me. Have them walk in, handcuff me in front of the board, break me down in front of the neighbors. She truly believed she had won. So I leaned back in my chair and smiled. "Let me guess," I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Your enforcement team is on the way to escort me out?" The entire room froze for a second. One of the board members shifted in his seat. Another looked at Karen like he had just realized something was off. And Karen. She froze. Her expression didn't crack, but the corners of her mouth twitched. Her fingers curled slightly over the edges of her notes. That was it. That was the moment. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know how wrong it was about to get. I checked my watch. "Well," I said, standing up slowly, "before your little security theatre starts, I think it's time we bring in some actual legal professionals." Right on cue, the double doors at the back of the room burst open, not slowly, not subtly, with force. Half a dozen uniformed officers poured into the room, flanking a woman in a blazer holding a folder thick with paperwork. She strode past the folding chairs, past the stunned board members, and came to a stop right at Karen's side. "Karen Mitchell?" she asked, voice flat, authoritative. Karen didn't answer. She stared straight ahead like she could wish the moment away. "You are under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, wire fraud, impersonation of law enforcement, extortion, and conspiracy to commit federal crimes." The room exploded. One of the board members stood up so fast his chair fell over. The other two were visibly shaking. Karen tried to speak, something about a misunderstanding, but the officer cut her off, reading her rights as they cuffed her hands behind her back. Her face turned pale. She looked around for support, for someone to back her up, but there was no one. Even her board members sat stone still, mouths shut, eyes wide. She wasn't in charge anymore. She was just another con artist caught in the act. I crossed my arms and watched in silence as they marched her out of the room. She kept trying to talk, saying things like, "I was protecting the community," and "This is all a mistake," but no one listened. The officers weren't here to negotiate. They were here to shut it all down. And the fallout? Oh, it was glorious. The news spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. At first, people didn't believe it. Then the details came out. The fraudulent notices, the fake officers, the fake legal threats. Neighbors started talking, really talking. People came forward with stories of their own. A retired couple down the block had paid almost $10,000 in violation fees over 2 years, threatened with eviction if they didn't comply. Another family had almost lost their home after Karen filed a fake lien against them for unpaid dues. And then there were the scare tactics, trash dumping, mailbox smashing, anonymous complaints to employers. It was all part of the same sick pattern. Karen hadn't been protecting the community. She had been bleeding it dry, using fake power to control people, steal from them, manipulate them into thinking they were powerless. And no one had stopped her, until now. Within a week, the entire HOA board was under investigation. Bank accounts were frozen. Every legal document they'd ever filed was pulled and examined. The county clerk's office issued a statement saying dozens of liens and filings tied to the HOA were likely fraudulent. Homeowners who'd been scammed started organizing, forming a legal coalition to sue not just Karen, but every board member who had enabled her. The HOA itself was dissolved, legally, officially, permanently. No more fines, no more fake police, no more late-night threats taped to people's doors. Karen? She lawyered up fast, tried to paint herself as the victim, blamed the board, claimed she was misled, said she thought she had authority. But the evidence was airtight. Emails, surveillance, her name on every forged document, her signature on every threat, and those 2 fake officers she sent to my door. Turned out they weren't even security licensed. Just 2 guys she paid under the table. One of them flipped almost immediately, gave up everything in exchange for immunity. When her trial finally came, it wasn't even close. The jury didn't take long. She was convicted on all counts: fraud, impersonation, conspiracy, sentenced to real prison time, not just a slap on the wrist. She went from banging a toy gavel in a folding chair courtroom to standing in front of a real judge, in a real courtroom, being told she'd be spending the next several years behind bars. And me? I'm still here, still living in the same house. No HOA, no Karen, no fake notices, just peace, quiet, a trimmed lawn, and a good cup of coffee in the morning. Every now and then I walk past Karen's old house. It's for sale now. No power, no influence, just another listing on the market. And every time I see it, I smile, because she thought she was untouchable. She thought she could bully her way through anything. But she didn't realize she tried to arrest the one person who knew exactly how to bring her empire down, piece by piece. And in the end, that's exactly what I did.